Am I right in thinking that a lot of these Western economies have allowed a lot of people into their countries to make up for the willingness or desire or the availability of people to do the sort of low wage jobs? Is this what's happened globally? Because it's what
I
people
think it
tell me in the
has.
UK.
Yes, frankly, I think that a lot of multinational corporations have abused the immigration system in order to drive down wages. In Canada, for example, the government massively expanded the international student and temporary foreign worker programs, and that allowed corporations to pay artificially low wages to people who do not have the same mobility rights and opportunities. And that drove down wages, displaced people from their jobs, and ultimately ballooned housing costs. And so my position is that we need to cap numbers and ensure that the economy, healthcare, and housing grows faster than the population at all times.
If you cap numbers, does that mean that these corporations, these entrepreneurs, these companies don't have enough people to fill the roles in their companies and therefore have to move somewhere else? What does it mean?
No, I mean, we have unemployment. We have people without jobs. But some multinationals don't want to pay full wages. So they think, well, I'll just undercut the wage by bringing someone in from a very poor country who's willing to work for a lot less and who has fewer rights because they can't leave the job to go to another employer. So it's kind of like Easy Street. And so my view is that when you've got unemployed people and you're trying to fill your workplace, pay higher wages. Give people a better return on their work.
You've got unemployment. Are those people trained and skilled and willing to do the jobs that Canada needs them to do?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have 100,000 unemployed construction workers. They could be building the homes that we need built. We have young people coming out of high school without a job. We have 30-year highs in unemployment among youth. They should be getting those jobs. And, Starbucks says, well, they don't want to take them. Well, maybe you're not paying enough. If you're not paying the right wage, then you're not going to get the right worker. But pay an equivalent wage and you'll attract a worker who will do the job.
Again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
So, Starbucks increase wages.
Yes.
Which means that Starbucks then will increase the cost of a cup of coffee, presumably.
Well, unless they can find more efficient ways to run their systems. More competition in the system will allow the worker to gain more and the consumer to pay less. And the entrepreneur in the middle has to find ways to save and operate more efficiently. That's the magic of the market, is that everybody has a vested interest in driving the most value for the lowest cost.
One of the interesting ways lots of employers are finding ways to drive efficiencies is this new technology called AI.
Right.
And again, maybe somewhat ironically here, Anthropic, who are one of the world's leading AI companies, released a report 2 weeks ago. I'll throw the graph up on the screen, but it shows where job disruption will take place based on how people are currently using their tools. And one of the things they noticed is that there's been a increase by, I think, roughly 14% in youth unemployment, because entry-level jobs are the ones often in white-collar industries that are being taken out first.
Right.
And you hear these things and you go, oh, that's some stats and whatever, and it's, not necessarily tanked the economy yet. But as an employer of hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world now, I have started to notice that the case for hiring certain groups of people is becoming much more tricky now because of these tools. And it doesn't make me sound great saying that. It's not that we're not hiring hundreds of people, but there's this certain set. When I look at specifically entry-level grads, if they aren't really AI proficient, they are a lot less appealing in some roles than young grads that are extremely AI proficient. And the problem is not many of them are. And that just in sort of a company like mine, if you're AI proficient, really irrespective of age, and you know how to build this thing called AI agents, it's kind of like you come with 50 team members of your own.
Wow.
That's what it's like. So I've got a kid called Kaz here. He's a young guy in his 20s. He's built a team of agents that now work for him. So hiring Kaz means I get Kaz and his team of agents because he's proficient in that technology. Most of the workforce hasn't been trained because of the education system to know a thing about this.
Right.
So it's becoming increasingly difficult to hire entry-level people, but actually all the way up the board, unless you have deep expertise in a domain, which would mean that I can get Kaz to make you the agents. So like my CFO, for example, 50 years working in finance, etc., deep expertise. I just need her, and then she can build out a team of AI agents to work with her. Back in the day, if you'd got 5 years ago, I would have needed her and her to have a massive team of people.
Right.
I say all this to say that there's a certain group in society, people that have deep domain expertise and people that are technical, that I think are in higher demand than ever before. And everybody else, as AI continues to replace them through things like autonomous driving and robotics is around the corner, I think there needs to be a real conversation about what happens to these people.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. So throughout history, we've had these scares where new technological developments have threatened to replace, and in reality have replaced, certain human labor. So you had during the Industrial Revolution, machines were replacing muscular power, and then you had the Luddites who came and tried to smash those machines to protect their jobs. In the end, they just got different jobs with higher pay because they could do more with these machines, and they didn't have to walk behind a mule's ass pushing a plow in the hot sun all day. They had a tractor that would pull the plow, and so on and so forth. And then in the dot-com era, we were told again that people are going to lose their jobs to computers. In fact, they were made more productive by computers. Do you think this time is fundamentally different than those prior technological revolutions?
I would say, first thing is nobody knows. The second thing I'd say is yes.
Okay.
And the reason I'd say yes is just the speed of disruption. So unlike in the Industrial Revolution, where it takes some time for the new technologies to become adopted because of the nature of what those technologies were, this technology is built on the internet, which has global distribution. So OpenClaw is a good example of a technology that is very, to simplify it for the audience, it can do anything on my computer. So if I put a computer here on this table, I can text OpenClaw on WhatsApp and tell it to go on this podcast right now, look at the part of the conversation that was most replayed by the audience, clip it, add subtitles to it, tweet it, or send it to my Slack channel. I can get it to, I'll tell you something I did the other day. I was in my house in Los Angeles and it was very, very hot because there's a heat wave at the moment. So I said to it, can you go on, take a look at my house online, buy me a umbrella that I can put because I like to work outside. I actually voiced it this. And what it did is it went on Google Maps. It looked all around my house from all around the outside because it knew where I lived for some bizarre reason. It knew that a charcoal umbrella at a certain size would suit that table out there. It went on Amazon, found the charcoal umbrella. It ordered it, arrives at my house.
And it transacted. Like you didn't have to go.
Because it had my login details to transact on this particular website. So, but it's just, the framing is it can do anything that you would do on a computer. A lot of people work on computers. And the speed of adoption that we're seeing is staggering. So my concern is actually the sort of near-term displacement before we figure out the types of jobs that, the types of new jobs. And then with robotics on the way, you hear someone like Elon Musk saying that there'll be more humanoid robots than humans, and people say, well, he's saying that because he's got a vested interest.
Right.
However, what I'd say is his timelines have sometimes not been right. But when he said he was going to make those spaceships land on chopsticks, the spaceships eventually land on chopsticks.
Oh, he's a brilliant mind. Don't underestimate him.
And my car out there drives itself without intervention. So I don't know. It's a really interesting time. I can both see why this technology is going to change the world for the better, and I believe it will. But then I'm just really concerned about certain economies and countries that aren't taking it seriously because they're so distracted by other things. Like a lot of them race baiting. A lot of them are like immigration seems to be the winning lever. Like just say the brown people are the problem. But I'm like, maybe the alien is something else. Maybe the alien are these agents that are actually going to take our jobs.
I believe the basic human need is meaning, to have a purpose in life. And often the question we have to ask is, how can we guide this revolution in technology so that it empowers people to do things that continue to give them meaning? I think it was John Adams who said something to the effect of, my father studied warfare so that I would have the security to study commerce. I study commerce so that my children will have the prosperity to study arts. If these new systems give us the ability to focus on the things that we love doing, that give us meaning in our lives, and that could be a different thing for each person, while at the same time supplying us with a lot of our material needs, it could be very positive. If it simply strips away our own utility and leaves lots of people without the ability to work at all, then it could be very, very dangerous to our lives. So I think that we have the public policy objective is to ensure that it becomes an enabler of humanity, not a replacement for it.
So you could come into power in, is it 2029 if there's no overthrowing of the current leader? 2029 is going to be an interesting time. If these sort of forecasts that we're getting from some of the world's leading experts in artificial intelligence and robotics come true, have you thought much yet about how you would counteract that? What you would do to make sure that there isn't huge job disruption? Because a lot of people like Sam Altman have suggested through their actions that they might support things like universal basic income. In fact, Sam Altman being the founder and co-founder of OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT, I think his other startup is called WorldCoin, which uses your retina scan to validate that you're a real human being, so that they can distribute money to people. Because in a world of AI, we're going to need to find a way to distribute wealth. And if you listen to Elon, he says we're going to live in the age of abundance, where working is going to be optional. He says now if you're a surgeon and you're training to be a surgeon, he says absolutely don't, because in a couple of years' time, there's going to be no human that's better than any AI surgeon.
Wow.
So if these things are true, like, surely you should be making plans. And when a lot of smart, I know they have an incentive, they're raising money, and they have a certain narrative which helps them raise money. But if they are right, the future looks very different from the past.
That's true.
Do you have a plan?
I have principles that I would apply as these technologies present themselves. And the principle for me is, how do we make sure that the AI enables and empowers people to make more decisions for themselves and have more freedom and to pursue their own meaning, rather than replacing and rendering them, giving them a sense of lost meaning and purpose. And so, do I think it's great that every minimum wage worker might have a personal assistant and a chauffeured vehicle? I do, because that would make more of their life they could spend on the things that thrill them and make them happy. Less of their life would be spent on the drudgery of having to drive in a traffic jam or sweep their floor. But at the same time, we have to make sure that people have the ability to work and contribute and give themselves a sense of meaning in their lives. So the other thing I would say is that as these technologies bring down costs, those savings should be passed on to people. They should not be inflated away. The government should not use this as an opportunity to just print more cash to reflate the cost of living. We should actually seek as our goal to lower the cost of living, make life more affordable, make our dollars go further, which hasn't happened in generations. And so if technology is going to allow us to produce more for less, then let's make sure that the working class people actually enjoy that benefit rather than having it inflated away.
It is quite concerning that, if wealth does accrue to these big companies and,
yes,
people like Elon, who, incredible entrepreneur, is going to become the world's first trillionaire.
Right.
And I don't think he'll be the last, the way things are going with artificial intelligence. And then if there is job disruption, I do think there's going to potentially need to be some government intervention, corrective government intervention. Do you not? I don't know.
Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. I mean, it was, Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winning economist, who embarrassingly predicted that the internet would have no more impact on our lives than the fax machine. And he's a Nobel Prize economist, I think from Princeton or Yale or something. So nobody's Nostradamus on these things. But we have to have guiding principles, and mine are the rules around technology should always be geared towards giving people more agency, more meaning, and more control over their lives, and not less.
It's funny because I don't hear it reflected enough in political discourse. I hear us focusing on other things, and one of those things is immigration. Across the Western world, the subject of immigration seems to be a bit of a winning formula for political leaders. If I think about the UK, what Trump said about being invaded by rapists and murderers from the southern border. Do you feel that it's a sort of a weaponized, divisive tool for people to get elected, complaining about the brown people or foreigners?
I'll just give you the Canadian experience. So for roughly 200 years, we had the most successful immigration system in the world, by far. In fact, other countries Both Republicans and Democrats in the United States used to say we need to study the Canadian system because it has been so successful. We had a point system that measured whether someone would be a good fit for our labor market, whether they would integrate well into our system. And overwhelmingly, people integrated, intermarried. My wife is a refugee from Venezuela. That is not an uncommon story in Canada. What we encountered was a very sudden and inexplicable increase in the numbers in the period from 2021 to 2024 that was strictly out of line with our ability to absorb people into housing, healthcare, and jobs. And this upset the social peace on immigration that we had had for 2 centuries leading up to it. And now everyone across the political spectrum agrees that it went too far, too fast. And the approach that we're taking is that we have to make it a lawful system. It has to follow the rules. People have to come in legally in numbers that we can absorb and ultimately integrate into jobs, society, and our way of life. Population cannot grow faster than the housing stock, or you'll run out of places to live. It can't grow faster than the number of jobs, or you'll run out of paychecks for people. And so we need a controlled, orderly system that's both compassionate and common sense.
It's such a divisive subject. You've seen what's happened here in the United States with ICE.
Right. Yeah. It's a different situation in the U.S. The immigration problem in the U.S. goes back many, many years, many years of chaos at the southern border. We didn't have that in Canada. Like, that was unheard of. We had roughly 1% of population immigrating to Canada for 200 years. It was uncontroversial in Canada up until this very strange, inexplicable spike that really only helped very wealthy landlords and employers that wanted to drive wages down and rents up. They were the only beneficiaries of the extreme increase in numbers.
If you don't get the replacement rate back up to a level where you're having enough kids in Canada, does it track that eventually you would have to rely on more immigration to solve for the sort of GDP issues?
Look, economic immigration of high-skilled people to our country has always been successful, and nobody resents that. One of the things that we have to do, though, is when people get to Canada, they have to be able to fulfill their potential. In Canada today, we have these gatekeepers that block immigrant professionals from even working in their field. So, for example, we have 20,000 immigrant doctors and 32,000 immigrant nurses who can't work in medicine because they can't get a license to practice. There's this incredibly bureaucratic system they have to go through that takes 8 or 9 years to prove that they actually have the qualifications. It's so crazy that when I went in for my eye surgery, there's a technician there who literally flies to the UAE to do eye surgeries 10 days a month, and then comes back to his family in Ottawa, where we only let him work as a technician. And so UAE is a more technologically advanced country than Canada, and eyeballs are the same in the UAE as they are in Canada. Immigrants in Canada have historically been more educated than our Canadian-born population, just in terms of their credentials, but have not been able to fulfill their work because our licensing system shuts them out. So I want to fix that with a merit-based test that gets them into the high-paying jobs that will actually strengthen our economy.
Much of the reason most people haven't posted content or built their personal brand is because it's hard and it's time consuming, and we're all very, very busy. And if you've never posted something before, there's so many factors in your psychology that stop you wanting to post. What people will think of you. Am I doing this right? Is the thing I'm saying absolutely stupid? All of these result in paralysis, which means you don't post and your feed goes bare. I'm an investor in a company called Stan Store, which you've probably heard me talk about. And what they've been building is this new tool called Stanley that uses AI, looks at your feed, looks at your tone of voice, looks at your history, looks at your best performing posts, and tells you what you should post, makes those posts for you. You can also just use it for inspiration. And sometimes what we need when we're thinking about doing a post for our social media channels is inspiration. Building an audience has fundamentally changed my life, and I think it could change yours too. So I'm inviting you to give this new tool a shot and let me know what you think. All you have to do is search coach.stan.store now to get started. Every once in a while you come across a product that has such a huge impact on your life that you'd probably describe it as a game changer. And I would say for about 35 to 40% of my team, they would currently describe this product that I have in front of me called Ketone IQ, which you can get at ketone.com, as a game changer. But the reason I became a co-owner of this company and the reason why they now are a sponsor of this podcast is because one day when I came to work, there was a box of this stuff sat on my desk. I had no idea what it was. Lily in my team says that this company have been in touch. So I went upstairs, tried it, and quite frankly, the rest is history. In terms of my focus, my energy levels, how I feel, how I work, how productive I am, game changer. So if you want to give it a try, visit ketone.com/Stephen for 30% off. You'll also get a free gift with your second shipment. And now you can find Ketone IQ at Target stores across the United States, where your first shot is completely free of charge. We have finally caved in. So many of you have asked us if we could bundle the conversation cards with the 1% diary. For those of you that don't know, every single time a guest sits here with me in the chair, they leave a question in the diary of a CEO. And then I ask that question to the next guest. We don't release those questions in any environment other than on these incredible conversation cards. These have become a fantastic tool for people in relationships, people in teams, in big corporations, and also family members to connect with each other. With that, we also have the 1% diary, which is this incredible tool to change habits in your life. So many of you have asked if it was possible to buy both at the same time, especially people in big companies. So what we've done is we've bundled them together and you can buy both at the same time. And if you want to drive connection and instill habit change in your company, head to thediary.com to inquire and our team will be in touch. What is the biggest threat, do you think, to the Western world and the Western way of living? Because people often, they point at Iran, they say China, they say Russia.
I think it depends on what China decides to do. I mean, China is a spectacular and brilliant civilization with so much to contribute to world harmony, if that's their choice. If the government decides that it's going to direct the immense successes of that country towards trading and working with other countries, then there's nothing to worry about. But if it is a very aggressive, bellicose approach, using technology for espionage, interference in foreign countries, as they have done in Canada, invading Taiwan, then China and Beijing in particular, the regime, could become the biggest risk and threat to our country and our world.
What does history say about this kind of moment in time where there's seemingly two world powers?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an incredible book called Thucydides' Trap, which a professor named Allison said that throughout history, he took, I think, 20 occasions where an incumbent superpower was caught up on by a challenging superpower. And in, I think, the majority of cases, it did end up in war. And now he said it's not necessary, though, and it doesn't have to happen. It can be avoided. And he lays out a plan in his book for it to be avoided. I think it can be avoided as well if Beijing can be made to understand that it is in the interest of China to be part of the community of nations, to work collaboratively, to trade freely, to be a partner rather than an enemy. And I hope they make the right decision.
Is it fair to say that the United States is really at war with China now already, but just through proxy wars and other types of sort of economic wars? And because now that they both have nuclear weapons, you can't really have a direct conflict, can you?
Well, let's put it this way. Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, these are all countries that were in the realm of influence of Beijing. And they're the countries where the United States is pursuing a change. So there is the war that we watch on the evening news and the real interest behind them that is driving it.
Canada doesn't have nuclear weapons, does it?
No, we do not.
Why?
We made a decision, I think it was about, I want to say about 40 or 50 years ago, not to pursue nuclear armament. We didn't think we had any need for it. Lots of nuclear power, lots of uranium, but we don't use it for weaponry.
Do you think Canada should have nuclear weapons?
I don't see a need for that. I don't know what we would get from it. We don't have any desire to threaten anyone with nuclear weapons. So I don't see a purpose for that right now. What? You think
Sounds quite Canadian.
That's true. But listen, we are a warrior nation. Make no mistake about it. We were in the World Wars 2 years before the Americans, and we're kind of like a golden retriever. We're friendly, we're likable, we like to get along, but if provoked, we will fight back.
Canada's building up its military.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because there's a consensus that we have not done enough to protect our territory from the incursions of hostile powers. And we often say in Canada, if you don't use it, you lose it. There's large territories of our country that are very hard to live in. We have an incredible Inuit population, but obviously, you can't heavily populate the Arctic archipelago with industry and stuff. So how do you assert sovereignty over those treasured territories? Well, you have to have a military presence there.
What's changed?
For Canada, it's that we want to maintain and ensure that we can make our own decisions without relying on the Americans.
Because the Americans have expressed that they are maybe not going to be as collaborative and friendly.
And we want to be able to decide for ourselves. We want to be masters in our own home. In Quebec, they say maître chez nous. And so if we want to control our own destiny and territory, we have to be able to protect ourselves. It has been very good for Canada to be next door to the biggest military power the world has ever seen and have friendly relations that go back to the early 1800s before we were even a country. We had largely friendly relations with this enormous power. But what has become clear is that we cannot simply rely on the Americans to protect us. We have to be able to protect ourselves. And that requires a massive military buildup for a country of our size. The second biggest country anywhere in the world. We have the longest oceanic coastline, even longer than Russia. So that takes money, and it takes a buildup like we've never seen. And that's what we as Canadians agree has to happen now.
This is in part because of Trump.
In part, yes.
Because Trump, through the election and then thereafter, said that he was going to make Canada an American state.
Which is never going to happen.
But that, with the leader of the most powerful military on earth says, even jokingly, that they are about to take your country, you can laugh. But at the same time, if I was leading Canada, I'd go, wait, is this possible? Are we ready to defend ourselves?
We, as Canadians, react very badly to that, and we're not going to ever be the 51st state or any part of the United States of America. The American people are our friends. They've been our top trading partner, our closest ally. As President Kennedy said, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, geography has made us neighbors, and necessity has made us allies. Those whom nature have thus joined together, let no man put asunder. But he understood that Canada was a separate country that had its own unique interests. And I think the American people understand that as well. I think the American people are very fond of Canada as a neighbor and friend, but they understand we will always be a sovereign country.
You would have been negotiating with Trump right now if the recent election in Canada had gone your way. This is a pretty stark graph that I've just slid you. Mm-hmm. It shows that you were leading in the polls seemingly up until the very, very last moment in the elections. Is that accurate, that poll?
Yeah, I think that's probably a weighted average, but yeah, I think more or less.
What happened?
Well, if you look what happened, our support didn't drop that much. The other parties collapsed in behind the Liberal Party, and it was largely due to the Canada-US issue that you raised.
Really?
So, but at the same time, we got the biggest vote count we had ever received and the highest share of vote that we've received since 1988. So we did perform very well. Our opponents performed even better. And now we have to build on the solid base that we've accumulated in order to win the next election.